Hey everyone, welcome back to Brittany Alexandra, my new YouTube channel. I don't know if you could see Kylo from this view, but he's here and he's very needy today. So forgive me if you hear him fussling around and stuff, but welcome back. Today I'm going to be talking about 2020's The List, Who Killed JonBenet Ramsey. So I know, when does it end with this? When are they going to let this poor girl rest? Well, the problem is we're never going to know who killed her, because someone's not fessing up. So if you're like me, you've watched so many documentaries of JonBenet Ramsey and you have your own theory already. So needless to say, if you don't know who she is, JonBenet was a little 6-year-old girl from Boulder, Colorado, and she was a pageant queen. So it was the year 95, it was the day after Christmas. JonBenet was the light of her family. If you see pictures, if you want to go check out my Instagram, crimeghoul_, there's tons of pictures I'm going to post about her. But she was just this beautiful Goldilocks haired girl. She was very vibrant. Vibrant is like not even the right word to describe her. She was just like a sunbeam. And her mom, Patsy Ramsey, had her doing pageants really early on. And, you know, some people are like, ooh, pageants, that's creepy. They sexualize children. And then some people are like, hey, it's a Southern Belle type of thing. That's what they do. It's just kind of customary for their lifestyle. And Patsy was a pageant girl herself. She had won an award. And she was just like a socialite. And her husband, Mr. Ramsey, he, very successful man, had his own business, was a millionaire, had just gotten a bonus of $118,000 for Christmas of 95. So they were living large. Patsy was married to him. He did have a prior marriage where he had other children, and his daughter, she passed away from a car accident. So he's already like struggled with his own life. Patsy was just beating stage 4 ovarian cancer, which is something that is so difficult to do. So they were really grateful in 95 to be celebrating Christmas together. And John and Patsy Ramsey actually had 2 kids together, the oldest son, Burke, and then little JonBenet. So they had finished up seeing friends for the night on Christmas Day. They went home around 9 o'clock. They went to bed. John and Patsy were on some type of medication and they went to sleep. Not really sure what medication they were on, but you know, that is kind of the story. And they went to bed. The next morning they wake up and Patsy goes down their beautiful spiral staircase, because obviously they have a great house, a beautiful house. And she comes downstairs and on the counter she sees these letters spread out. And they are ransom notes about, you know, if you want your daughter back, you're going to give us $118,000. And if you go to the police, if you even so much as talk to a dog and we find out, she's going to be executed. You're going to get her head. She's going to be beheaded. Now, the weird thing about this ransom note, as investigators would find, it seems like it was really forced. It seems like it was verbatim from like a crime movie where, you know, someone's daughter is kidnapped, some really rich person's daughter is kidnapped, and the sentences and the sentence structure is pretty much the same as these movies. And investigators would say it would have taken like 20 to 25 minutes to write that letter, and it wasn't even the only letter. There was actually like a scratch copy that was kind of thrown out, and the paper was used from Patsy's notepad. The pen was used from the Ramsey home. So all the supplies were used there, but so you're talking 20, 25 minutes to get this perfect letter down, but there was already a scratch paper one. So clearly this person felt comfortable in the house. They were able to write this out. People would speculate that it was actually Patsy who wrote the ransom letter and everything, and it's pretty plausible if you ask me. But needless to say, the Ramseys were freaking out. They called the cops, they called their friends, they had friends come over. I guess they just had a lot of friends in their neighborhood who came over and they were trekking through the house. Of course, that means a lot of evidence is probably being moved around. There were people cleaning the counters, people making toast. The police were coming in and not stopping any of it. So the Boulder Police Department, completely inexperienced with this type of homicide investigation, considering no one really ever got murdered there. It was a really affluent town, a nice place to live, a dream place to raise your kids. So makes me so mad. I'm sorry. But yeah, so nobody stopped it. Cross-contamination all over the place. So, you know, John and Patsy are pretty calm for the most part, which is kind of shocking to most people. And one of the first officers on the on the scene. I don't really know her name right now, but she came in and she was like, listen, we're going to investigate. We're going to be looking at this house top, bottom. And he was just like, well, she was clearly kidnapped. She's not here. And she's like, okay, but we have to investigate the house, look around. Let me know if you see anything out of place or see anything that's JonBenet's that shouldn't be here. And of course, John grabs his friend. He runs downstairs to the basement. Lo and behold, he opens the wine cellar and there's his little girl with a white sheet over her body. Now, instead of shouting out to the police officers like, hey, I found her, he does that, but he picks her up and he brings her upstairs, moving her from where she was left. It's not looking good. So you don't do that. You're supposed to leave everything, but whatever. People don't think rationally. I get it, but to an extent, I'm like, maybe it's just because like I'm a crime junkie and I watch crime documentaries galore and forensic files. It's like I already know what to do in a situation, and I forget that the normal person who doesn't watch this morbid content doesn't. So yeah, they find her in the wine cellar. He brings her up. Instead of putting her on a couch or something, he lays her upon the floor, rips the duct tape off her mouth. She's like tied. He rips the ties off because he didn't want to see her that way. He didn't want Patsy to see her that way. And a lot of people would think this is odd because it's almost like, why would you want to put your daughter on the floor? Why wouldn't you want to put her somewhere more comfortable? But I mean, I guess like in the same sense, I could see like everybody spread out, give her air, give her some room if she's alive. And she wasn't alive. She was cold to the touch. The officer was standing there with John, and John's like, is she alive? And she kind of like leaned to her cheek and then started listening to her chest, and the cheek was cold. There was no heartbeat. She's like, no, she's dead. And she would describe that as being really, really scary. She can remember grabbing onto her holster and noticing that there were a certain amount of bullets in her holster, and she was actually afraid of John Ramsey. She felt that gut feeling, which I always go with gut feelings. There's something to be said for that. As if you've watched my content or listened to my content before, you know I'm all about the gut instinct. So I believe that that officer was right to feel that way. Clearly, there was something telling her that this is seriously not right. Something's off, and I'm afraid it might be him. So years go on. We're almost at like 35 years or something like that, and we still don't know who killed JonBenet. There's been so much speculation. Again, I'm sure you guys have heard of this case if you're into true crime. Like, who hasn't heard of JonBenet? And maybe you have your own idea. That's great. But mainly I want to talk to you about the new 2020, The List, Who Killed JonBenet Ramsey, that just came out in 2021. And it's all about kind of the detective's legacy. Like, this one detective came out of retirement and he took over the Ramsey case, and it's basically looking at everything that he compiled over the years. And he passed away, unfortunately, from cancer. So now it's his granddaughters who are carrying it on, and they actually have a podcast, which I'll put in the comments, in the description below, so you guys can see who they are and what they're doing. I think it's a really great thing. And they refuse to give up. They want to find out, and their grandfather's death wish was figure out who did this. There's a list of people I have. He's on there. She's on there. Whoever did it is on that list. And his big thing was, keep it simple. Usually the answer is right in front of your face. It's usually not far off. So that's that. A few years back, Patsy and Burke, their son, and John Ramsey were exonerated. They kind of gave up on the fact that a lot of people thought it was them who killed her because of their weird interviews, which again, like, I can link down below, like, all these different interviews that they did, and they are really uncomfortable to watch. Burke actually, a few years back, just did his first interview because a lot of people were speculating that maybe Burke killed her and the parents didn't want him to go away, so they covered it up for him. Again, not far-fetched. But after all these years, we weren't really hearing from him, and recently he did a Dr. Phil interview. Of course, it always comes back to Dr. Phil. That guy's got the connections. And the interview was really unsettling. I will link that below too, but it's so unsettling because he's just smiling really creepily. And I get it, people get nervous, but you watch it, you tell me how you feel about it. My gut tells me this is not right. So basically, the list really doesn't give us much new information, I'm gonna be honest, and that was my biggest thing. I was like, am I really gonna watch this? I've watched so many documentaries, and they're all the same. I've listened to all these podcasts, they're all the same. It's the same evidence, and that's all we got. And basically, the list was really just going over that we really don't think the Ramseys did it. Here's some evidence you may not have heard of. Maybe it was the Santa Claus that used to come to the Ramseys' Christmas party, and I don't think it was him. Apparently, there were like 84 or something like that sex offenders within the neighborhood that they lived. So much for Boulder being a nice community. So, I mean, the detective on this case that came out of retirement, he swears that it was an intruder, but there's so much to the intruder theory that just doesn't make sense, because downstairs in the basement, there was a window that was broken, and John had locked himself out of the house a few months prior, so he broke the window, and that's how he got in. And when JonBenet was found, there was a blue suitcase right underneath that window, suggesting that, you know, it wasn't there. Maybe somebody kind of used it to get out, but there were cobwebs on the window that weren't displaced. Like, if you went through that window, there's no cobwebs that are gonna be there. They would just kind of be broken. It would be evident that somebody went through the window. And there were no footprints outside of the window, and there was snow on the ground. I don't think so. But yeah, that's really it. They just go over that. They go over the fact that maybe there was an intruder. You know, the Ramseys are innocent, kind of thing, which I don't really like. I honestly wasn't too happy about it. The only thing I was happy about is that they kind of went over who this detective is, and I can't think of his name right now. I should have wrote it down, but I'll put his name in the description, and his granddaughter's in the podcast that they have. That was really the newest information, the newest thing I got anyway, and I was kind of like, this was disappointing, which I had a feeling it would be. But I really started thinking about my own theory, whether, you know, I'm no professional, people, but if I had to guess what happened, here's the thing. So, how was JonBenet murdered, you might ask, which I should have addressed earlier. So, there was something called a garrote, I think, that was used to strangle her. So, first she was hit, blunt force trauma to the head, like really bad. Her skull was like fractured, and then she was strangled to death. And basically, a garrote is something you use like a rope or something, and you use the wood to kind of like twist, so it makes it easier to strangle somebody. And there had been evidence that she was grabbing at it and trying to get it off of her, and the force that was used for this was so strong. She had indentations in her neck. There was evidence of sexual assault. The wooden part of a paintbrush that was used for the garrote was not only the murder weapon, but she was actually sexually abused, molested. It was used to sodomize her. And if you don't know what that is, look it up, because I don't think YouTube would allow me. They filter everything. They don't want to hear it. But anyway, that's what happened. And yeah, so there was DNA in her underwear, and it was male DNA. And they basically exonerated the Ramseys because they found that nobody matched that DNA sample. But here's the thing. John Ramsey had a lot of money. Who's to say? And, you know, he just kept saying, you know, I'm sure that the person who did this is probably already in prison. Like, that's what you want us to think. So you know what he probably did, people? There's somebody in there for pretty close to life. Hey, let's figure out how we can get into contact with someone who wants their family taken care of. I'll give them, like, a payment. I just need some of their DNA. So I think that, you know, I mean, actually, that doesn't work out. Never mind. Because they didn't really have a motive to kill her, I don't think. Unless Burke hurt her, like Burke hit her in the head. But that's not enough time to get DNA from someone, so forget it. I guess they couldn't have planted the DNA there, not that quickly. Well, I completely debunked myself, but anyway, I do think that the Ramseys killed her, and I hate to say that. I think that maybe Burke did hurt her. She was wetting the bed a lot too, quite often, and usually when there's someone wetting the bed, there's usually a sexual assault going on, especially for into 6 years of age. To wet the bed frequently, there's usually something that's really upsetting the child. Again, I'm no professional. I just go off of based of what I'm reading and my academic journey so far in psychology. But that's usually what it means. So who knows? I don't know. I think maybe Burke was like abusing his sister, and Patsy mentions in one interview, you know, like, I'd do anything for my kids no matter what they got themselves into. I'd be there for them no matter what. So would you go as far to cover up the murder of your daughter? Like, accidental murder. I think Burke might have hit her in the head. Maybe they were just roughhousing or something, and that happened early in the morning. The Ramseys they had sleep medication, or some type of medication that was keeping them in a deep sleep, so they wouldn't have heard anything probably, especially if they're in the basement. This was like a 3-story house. So that's what I think. Maybe him and JonBenet were kind of scuffling, and the parents got scared and were like, shit, what are we gonna do? But that doesn't explain the male DNA that's in her underwear that didn't match any of them. So I don't know. Interesting. I mean, I've heard other people speculate, you know, like the DNA sample in the underwear was so minuscule, it could have been from whoever packaged the underwear when it was first bought. It wasn't really washed or anything. It was a brand new pair of underwear. So, you know, that's always a factor too. But I don't know. I think there's some serious foul play involved here. And I really don't think it was an intruder. I think the simplest answer is that Burke, John, and Patsy were in the house. What's the simplest answer? Someone in the house killed their kid. That's what I think. Someone in that house killed her. And judging by their interviews and everything, a lot of it felt like rehearsed. They didn't go to the police right away. They would try to say, yeah, they refused to be questioned by the police at first. And, you know, John was saying, well, Patsy really didn't feel well. Look at everything we were going through. And they wanted to interview her at the police station. There were people outside of her house. How are we getting out of her house? Yada, yada, yada. But that's interesting because the next day, literally 2 days after JonBenet was found murdered, they went to CNN and they did an interview with CNN. So you left your house to go interview for CNN, but you didn't want to leave to go speak to the police, the authorities? No. Also, the next day, like, they had their own private jet and everything. The private jet was ready to take John Ramsey to Georgia. They were all going to go home, actually, to Georgia. That's where they came from. And he was just like, yeah, I couldn't stomach being here. I needed to go home. Okay, but what if the cops need you? What are you running off to Georgia for? See what I'm saying? There's some weird things about this. And I mean, yeah, like, I could see you wanting to go home and everything, but in the same sense, your daughter was just murdered. And then the ransom note just doesn't make sense, because why are you leaving a ransom note when the little girl's already dead? It makes no sense. Even if you get the money, like, there's nothing to bargain for because she's dead. So the ransom note is just obsolete to me. So I don't know. Let me know what you think. Did you watch the list? Did you take a look at that? What'd you think of it? Did you find it as lackluster as I did? Let me know down below. And that's really nice. If you guys haven't watched my other video, which was super recent, it was last week, I talked about Richard Ramirez, because The Night Stalker is a 5-part series that just came out on Netflix last week. And I kind of wanted to give some input that wasn't included there. So if you haven't watched it yet, go check it out. It's called The Night Stalker You Didn't Know. It goes over his brutal childhood. It goes over the groupies that were in love with him during trial. But yeah, go check it out. Let me know what you think. I hope you like this video. I know it's kind of short, but I just had to vent about this because this is just a frustrating case. But other than that, today, well, I don't know when I'm going to upload this, but Tuesday, I've been uploading a podcast episode to my podcast Crime Ghoul, which you can access through Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, Google Play, all these, any way you could think of. My podcast is there. Go check me out. It's crime space ghoul. And my Instagram is crimeghoul_. You could find me on Facebook by just typing in crime ghoul. Same with Twitter. You could find me there. Let's have a talk. Let's have a discussion about this stuff. I just released episode 19 called Carly is Missing. Well, Carly is Gone. And it's about the disappearance of Carly Gousset. 16-year-old Carly. She came from Bishop, California. And she's been missing for almost 3 years. And her story is chilling. It freaks me out. Go listen to it, because kind of like, I guess I kind of went with the theme. I have a missing person and then a case that's not solved. So I've got no happy end, well, no ending for you guys. I mean, no satisfying end to a story. So go check that out. Let me know what you think. DM me, comment, drop a comment here. Like this video if you watched it and you enjoyed the content. Subscribe, because this is not the end of the videos for me. I'm going to keep uploading because I find that I really like talking to a camera and I really like speaking to a microphone. And if you've been with me, you've been listening to my podcast, you'll know that my audio has gotten so much better. I now have this beaut, my blue Yeti. I'm fancy. I got it for Christmas. Thank you, Santy. But yeah, this guy has helped me a lot. So I know some of you are interested in starting up a podcast. I highly suggest that from the get-go because you sound so good, crisp, and pretty professional. I will leave a link down below on where you can get that. And a lot of people ask me on my social media account where I got my coffee pot for. That was the coffee pot you saw in the beginning. It's a nostalgia coffee pot. It looks like it's straight from the 50s. If you like that and you want one, I don't blame you. I think it's better than the Keurig. I'm old school. I like the coffee pot. I like the stronger coffee. So if you want one, again, link down below, go buy one. It's really not that expensive on Amazon. And yeah, let me know if you end up getting one. Let me know if you need help starting a podcast or you have any questions. I could probably be a bit of help. But other than that, I bid you adieu. Thank you again for listening, and I will see you soon. Bye.